Welcome, panel members. My name is Smita, and I use a pronoun she and her. And I would like each one of you to share that so that we are clear what pronouns we use. I think let's start with that.
Hi everyone, my name is Archana and I use the pronouns she and her.
Hello everyone, my name is Nishtha and my pronouns are she or hers.
Hi, good evening to everyone. My name is Machindra Kapare and I am pronounced as Mr. Kapare. Thank you.
Thank you. So last night, I was sharing with my team that I was signing around 300 documents of a sexual harassment report that I closed. It was 300 pages. While the signing is a physical effort, what went in through that was humongous for us to learn, for each one of us to learn. Now, this was a woman complaining about sexual harassment. The reason that, criminal minds, Machindra, we were discussing about, right? So the thought process, so I was looking at that case and I was thinking, why did this ever happen? This was because she couldn't fit in. She couldn't fit into the culture of an organization, okay? So what I realized is it's not only women who struggle with it, right? While finally it ended up into a sexual harassment complaint, but what did it start with? It started with hostile environment being created for somebody who just couldn't fit into that corporate culture. So today's discussion is on the PoSH law, Prevention of Sexual Harassment Law, which came in 2013. This law came to us with a lot of struggle. It started way back in 1997, and I'm not going to share the entire story because a lot of y'all know about it. But today, why is it important? Why are we discussing in this panel? This panel is Kashish, which speaks about the rights of cis people, okay? So LGBTQ plus rights, we are speaking about it. Do they face sexual harassment? Are corporates doing anything about it? Are we only concerned about women and sexual harassment that they face? So this is a very deeper discussion today we're going to have, and I start with Nishtha, you being out and open as a trans woman. What is this only sexual harassment that you would have faced in your career as a researcher, right, in a corporate? Or is it more than that? Is it curiosity harassment? People will be curious about what you are, how you are, and many other questions. Before you respond to it, I also want to share something. There's a disclaimer. There could be some words which we would use, which out of innocence that we would express. The idea is to ensure that you forgive us, right? And I know this community is very, very tolerant. I've been working with y'all, and I know all of y'all are very tolerant. So with that, I would want to ask you this question, Nishtha.
I would want to thank KelpHR as well as Team Kashish Fest for having such a very important conversation on this particular platform. While a lot of queer people go through harassment at a workplace, we may not be able to identify what form of harassment it is, because a lot of organizations do not really educate or share the rights, in terms of prevention of sexual harassment at workplace with everyone. Even if they do, it would just restrict to women, as it is mentioned in the law. Queer people have been kept away from being informed, especially trans persons. While I was working with a couple of corporates, I wasn't aware what happening to me was correct or incorrect, whether it was sexual harassment or whether it was some other type of harassment that was happening with me. So whether to report it or not, or even if I do report, what would happen would be a question mark. So often it would lead to quite unpleasant experiences, such as getting demoralized or not being provided with the appropriate support, and often an hostile environment would have been created, which would force us to quit, and move forward with our career. I remember there were so many instances that took place with me while I was transitioning, right from the early days of my transition to where I have been. And people said so many things which were quite inappropriate. but I wasn't able to identify whether it was actually sexual harassment or not, because we weren't told about sexual harassment at workplace. I quite distinctly remember that there were a lot of queer people working around me, and they were going through a lot of physical abuse as well, in front of their managers, in front of their peer colleagues. But no one would ever raise their voice. We were often being taken for granted. We were often being mocked, made fun of, in front of everyone. And people were quite confident and sure that, oh, this person being a queer one would definitely not raise their voice. Or even if they do, there would be no help provided and the case would be just shut. So it requires one to understand that more than, just being quiet, you need to stand up, you need to be an ally and see in what better way you could help a queer person overcome such obstacles and let them know about their rights, let them know how it could be helpful for them, not at legal level, but at least at an organization level, such a behavior would not be tolerated.
So are you able to identify a particular behavior as harassment or not harassment? So for yourself, okay, any behavior that you feel unwelcome, any behavior you think that you do not like, any behavior which has sexual connotation to it, whether it is intentionally done or not, but you are impacted, is a sexual harassment behavior. So if you find these 3 checks, this is a time when you have to stand up for yourself. I'm sure you know about it, but I'm not sure how many other people knew. I did not know for many, many years myself. So when I read this and somebody enlightened me, it was an aha effect. And I think people who are now coming to workplace should know this definition loud and clear, right? That is one thing. Second thing, what you beautifully spoke about is, as a bystander, do I have a role to play? Somebody else is facing a harassment. Mera kya jata hai? That is what an ally or anybody, even before being an ally, I feel as a bystander, each one of us should support. If you want a safe place for yourself, you should be supporting the other person who's being victimized. This is what I feel. And with that, I move to Machindra. From the legal aspect, Machindra, this law is only for women, all right? Have you heard what is happening at the back end? Is this law going to be extended to other genders as well? Anything from your point of view on this?
Smita, I must say that the struggle for the human rights practically started on a very formal note since the year 1948, when the Universal Declaration of the Human Rights was adopted by the United Nations organizations, and India is the party to that. From that time till today, practically more than 35 countries have signed various treaties for the equality of the right, equality of the status. The Indian courts have always espoused the causes of the equality of status, and the preamble of the Constitution of India very specifically talk about the equality of, and it offers even the justice, which is the social justice and the equality of status and of opportunity. The reason I've said that the Indian courts, starting from the high courts to the Supreme Courts, have always espoused the clause, and that is reflected in the recent judgment which were passed by the apex court of this country. So 2014, the Supreme Court of the Honorable Supreme Court of this country gave a judgment which is very popularly called as the Nalsa judgment. And in that judgment, for the first time, Supreme Court recognized the transgenders as the third gender. And Supreme Court said that the fundamental rights, whatever is there guaranteed to every citizen of this country should also be equally guaranteed to every such person. Actually. Thereafter, another landmark judgment came in the year 2018, wherein that was the case in 𝙤𝙤𝙙𝙧𝙨 versus Union of India, and a couple of other petitioners were also there. It actually abolished the element of bestiality or criminality which was there under section 377 of the Indian Penal Code. And again, 2019, where the private members bill was introduced in the parliament, in the Rajya Sabha, saying that the offenses pertaining to the criminal law, which is the Indian Penal Code and a couple of other criminal laws, are also there. and also the sexual harassment related issues which are discussed in the Sexual Harassment of Women at Workplace Prevention Prohibition Redressal Act. So there was a bill which was introduced that let us now consider to make all these offenses as the gender neutral actually. So irrespective of whether a woman is harassed or whether a woman is assaulted, there would be a situation when many people, including a man also may get sexually harassed, and hence it is imperative that the law should be made as a gender neutral. I'm confident that the way even Indian government has actually supported this, and hopefully the recommendation given by the 172nd Law Commission report in the year 2000 and thereafter various judgments that were passed by the Honorable Supreme Court, very soon the government of India may consider that the law can be made gender neutral, and any offenses which are then committed by the people, irrespective of whatever gender they are, against the people who are whatever gender they are, would definitely have the equal protection of the law.
Thank you, Machindra. And I must inform everybody that KelpHR works with around 700 corporates pan-India, and 99% of organizations have gender-neutral policies. So they welcome all kinds of cases of sexual harassment or otherwise. Okay, a most important question to you, Archana, and it's really big question for you, and I want you to bring in all your experience from the corporate here. What are the best practices in the organization to create safe workplaces for queer people?
Hi, good evening, everybody. I represent the Humsafar Trust, and I was speaking to you before that I come from a corporate, non-governmental organizations which did not really have very strong HR policies. It's a privilege to sit here and talk about the best practices because I work for an organization where close to 90% of the workforce, we are from the community. We are from the LGBTQ spectrum. We are queer. Most of them definitely are in the closet. And the range of, first of all, I'd like to answer one point that Mr. Machindra raised, that the act is there, right? It is not gender neutral, but that does not stop any HR from adopting that and using it for everyone. Nothing stops you from doing that because, for example, the Humsafar Trust itself has applied PoSH and has also adapted it according to the law of the land. Definitely, like we do, like we do respect the Vishaka guidelines, but it applies to everyone who works out there. Our policies, including maternity leave, is not for one gender alone. It is for everyone who's working out there. Whether I plan to have a baby myself, I mean, if my partner plans to have a baby, I have a right to the leave. So these are the changes that we brought in as an organization, and also with the NALSA judgment. We've also adapted the Transgender Act into our policy. So we mixed a lot of other policies together to empower ourselves. So the best practice, like I say, there is an act, it's not gender neutral. Let's wait for that to come in force and then we start changing our policies. Nothing is stopping you. You have every right, you know what's happening. You don't really have to sit and count the number of people who are queer in your organization. They won't tell you, but let me tell you, there are enough queer people in your organization. Your job as an HR is to just put your policies in place. It's the time, everyone's doing it, it's happening abroad superbly. A lot of organizations in India are doing a great job with that. And I think nothing should stop any HR from really putting that into their own policy. Secondly, I would like to talk about, we talk about policies, but there are two other things that I want to discuss here is the best practices are how do you start adapting these policies into, the hold of the management or even your staff. Especially when it comes to the LGBTQ spectrum, it does not happen overnight. Like I said, I come from a different workforce other than Humsafar in the past, where I was just telling you before this session that I did come out to someone who I thought was a very close colleague of mine, and she switched off. these are the times when I feel, okay, where I am working right now, I feel so, I feel like I bring my best version of myself to work because I work for an organization that lets me be and has a policy in place. But I also see the focus on training, the focus on sensitization. Um, Working continuously, it does not happen once a Pride month because we're here. It keeps continuing as a process. Training is very integral part of our own growth in the organization. And I'm not saying everyone in the workforce would understand everyone's needs, but we do our best to bring in those practices, and especially via training where we're able to at least talk about everybody's needs. Secondly, we talk about infrastructure, which is so important. And we've been talking about gender neutral, loos so gender neutral loos out there is such a debated term right now, because I have friends who are in the corporates, and yes, they are allies, and yes, they have these rainbow colored tags. But when it comes to providing gender neutral toilets for anyone, they have made such a fuss about it because I was reading about it where typically a gender neutral space is a bunch of cubicles and you'll meet a bunch of people out there. Like if I'm going to a men's room, it will have these series of cubicles out there, and that's a meeting point for a lot of people. If I make a gender neutral loo, I mean, what's really being advised is you make it one single cubicle where one person can use it at a time, but have several such spaces within the organization, because that's what allows you to bring in privacy, that allows you your own space. And that's for anyone, even for a woman. For example, if she's nursing, you need a single space for you to be able to take care of your own needs. So creating infrastructure and creating a budget for that kind of infrastructure is very important. And that's where the debate happens. That's where it completely crashes, because you're not able to break that structure within the organization. Thirdly, which I want to talk about, is HR practices, where, if you're including PoSH, you're bringing in new policies which would suit the queer community. My question is, are you on board first? Is your organization's vision on board first? Do your own soul searching before just starting to apply things because they are supposed to look good on paper, because they come crashing like a house of cards. When you really have to apply, and when you really have someone who's come to you with a problem, if you haven't strengthened yourself, if you haven't really internalized it as an organization, you are going to crash along with that person. And that person will eventually leave this organization. So it's best that when you're hiring, one is, yes, increasing the number of diversity within your hiring practices, and also keeping in touch with organizations that work with the queer community to be able to strengthen your own pillars.
I'm sure a lot of the organization, at least that we work with, will be able to pick up points from what you just said. But there is something very unique that we came across, and I think, Nishtha, you'll be able to add little value here. There's something called as dead naming. Okay. Now in organizations, right, where they don't basically understand the difference between gender and sex, okay, forget asking your preferred name, right? So any tips for them to how to manage that bit, Nishtha?
Thank you. Thank you for stressing on this particular term, dead naming. While a lot of organizations may not find themselves equipped with hiring members from the trans community or non-binary spectrum, they may not really incorporate having a special column called as name or preferred name. Organizations don't realize that we are going through a journey where we'd want to be addressed with the name of our own choice. And knowing that we carry our legal documents, having a name which has been our past, and we would address it as a dead name, they would not really consider the one that we affirm with, or the one with we declare or announce. To such organizations, I would always recommend to incorporate a column in their application forms, or even at reception or at the security checkpoints wherever you require a person to share their name or reveal their name. You can always have that column in place to let them declare rather than being called by their dead names, which may have an impact on them, on their mental health as well. So it's just little that we could, do from our end and create a major difference for a queer person. Apart from this, it is always good to ask. If you don't know, ask but not assume. That will also really make a queer person feel included. I remember many a times queer people around talk about this particular aspect, that the onus of inclusion is amongst us and not the one on the people who have been excluded for a very, very long time. And the queer folks, non-binary folks, have been excluded and have never been the part of the mainstream. So why not ask them, what is it that we could do to make your experience better? It begins from there, Let's have conversations. Conversations which will help us and many others who would be coming and, working with us in our organization. So I think these are the two little things which all the corporates can really incorporate. I mean, you don't require any policy changes in this, but just adding a column in one particular document.
Just hold that thought. There is another question, and we were discussing about it and debating. A lot of our forms, like PF forms, gratuity forms, have family, nominations, where you have to suggest nomination and also give your relationship. But there's a concept called chosen family, right? So any suggestion for corporates to?
Absolutely. Wonderful, wonderful point to stress upon. While a lot of queer folks have been away from their families, they choose their own families. And their families could be someone who they trust upon, someone who they feel comfortable with and can confide into. So for most of us, our family of choice is right here at Kashish. Likewise, it could be any ally or supporter, who has been an integral part of our journey while we've been, going through so many things, be it transitioning or be it undergoing gender affirmative surgical interventions, etc., etc. In such a scenario, having the person who we want to be, our, what I can say, nomination should be allowed, rather must be allowed. It's just as, having so many relationships listed in the document, but not a family of choice or, for that matter, others, is something which keeps us away from our rights. And that's another little step which corporates can take in by introducing this particular aspect in their, nomination forms so that we can choose who we want to nominate.
Thank you. And then I would want to hear from Machindra if there is any technical or legal aspect to it which could hinder the whole thought process.
No, I don't think so, actually. As I've said very specifically, after this 2018 judgment, there is a recognition. And there is a proper, all the fundamental rights, all the rights that are guaranteed to citizens of this country is equally now forwarded or is equally distributed, given to any such person who has preferred to transition the gender or is actually recognizing himself or herself associated with this particular LGBTQI community. With respect, I say so. So I don't see a technical challenge here. In case if any organization is actually doing something, it is a violation. And to add what Nishtha had said, there are a couple of situations wherein people would prefer to nominate someone under the Provident Fund Act, or whether it is under ESI, or whether it is under gratuity. You have a right to do so now going forward. I don't think there would be any kind of a challenge that would come.
So Machindra, just stay. One more question that pops in my mind is, people from community generally don't want to stay in a long-term jobs. They prefer freelance job because they feel safe and secure, not going to work every day and facing challenges. So they prefer freelance jobs, right? Now, in such situation, does PoSH apply to them? That's a question that comes because PoSH is looked as corporate, somebody who goes to work every day. But what about freelancers or people who have odd jobs, like to, artists, folks who, so those people, what do we do with that?
Thanks, Smita. This is very, very critical question. I would first say that even though the definition of the aggrieved women in the law is a gender-specific definition, actually. So, incidentally, if there are any situations wherein a man is harassed by a woman, probably the statutory protection is not available under the law at the moment. However, Archana has already said that many organizations already created gender-neutral policies. Now, coming to the questions wherein if someone is acting as a freelancer and is actually she is providing the services, and if she is harassed, even by a woman from the company or by any man in the company, the definition of the aggrieved women very specifically talk about a woman of any age, whether employed or not. And that is where she has the statutory protection given under the law. My only request and appeal that in case if you really face any kind of this situation, please don't remain silent. Please bring it to the notice of the company officers. There are so many forums which are created by the government as well now. Not only the internal complaints committee, there is also a local complaints committee which is made by the district officer. There is also a She window which is available on the Women and Child Ministry website. So you can actually even register any kind of a concern complaint on that She mailbox. There is also a forum available to you in the form of a police machinery wherein sexual harassment has been recognized or is inserted after the Nirbhaya case in Delhi. The sexual harassment is a separate section which is inserted under the Indian Penal Code, so you can have the protection from the police machinery as well. You can also report the matter directly on cybercrime cell. So there are so many options available. My only request is that until and unless we will not come forward and will not become vocal on our issues, concerns that we are going through, it would be difficult for even the organizations to take the cognizance for and initiate the corrective steps. Thanks, Smita.
That's so important, and I think folks from community should be aware that there is a proper forum. Local complaints committee is available under every district in India. And if you feel you're not able to reach out, please reach out to one of us and we'll be happy to help you. Okay, so do not keep mum. So yesterday's, I was sharing with you about the case that happened yesterday, and I was signing around 300 pages document. I was so glad that this woman reported. She had resigned. Okay, she just wanted to go away. But something triggered to her and said that if I am facing such harassment, after me, there'll be a series of people who would face this harassment. So can I just raise my hand and make a formal complaint? And that was what was required. And this was a very senior person, and it fell off like house of cards. And we were so amazed that so much of dirt was being there, and was not cleaned up for so many years. So please raise your hand, please seek for support. At KelpHR, we are constantly working in this space. We want to create a safe workplace, and we'll really want anybody reaching out. We'll be happy to help you. Yeah?
Smita, I just wanted to share one more point here, just to add what Smita had said. Another understanding of this entire issue is that when a problem is not discussed in mainstream, does not mean that the problem is not available there. When we are talking about gender neutrality and offering the equal protection of the law to everyone now, this does not diminishes the challenges which are faced by the women. What it actually brings forward is that the similar kind of a challenges faced by every other person. And that is what it is very critical that we should definitely talk about gender neutrality and the equal protection. That is, I just wanted to add this point as an additional to Smita, what you say.
I just have one point to make, because I think what's missing from this discussion is, if we are closing right now, it's mechanisms. Because PoSH is not only protection, but also redressal of the, how do you put your mechanism in place as an organization. So one is, yes, when we join an organization, you're made to fill this non-disclosure agreement and you sign it off. But secondly, what people don't really tend to ask the question is, who do I go to when I have trouble? Obviously, by default, we all know that HR is the place to go to. But according to PoSH, well, it has to form a committee, an internal complaints committee. So everywhere that you work, sadly, PoSH, I think, can only be formed if there are more than 10 employees. So I had a question for you later, is what happens if there are places which are less than 10, which there are, especially in the development sector, they do. But it's important to go and ask the right questions. Because yes, we are also grappling with what's happening to you. Is it abuse? Am I thinking too much? Am I overthinking? I understand, but it's very important to know the mechanism that the place offers, because most of the times they do. They have an email, for example, the Humsafar Trust has an email which all the employees know about it. It's called 𝙤𝙤𝙙𝙤𝙤𝙤@humsafar.org. Very simple. So if anything happens to me, I know it's very quickly, I can just shoot out a mail, and it's between the HR and the senior management. Also, I am aware of the internal complaints committee. I know there are 5 members and an external member. The external person is I think works with NIMHANS, and internal are just all senior management. So I know there are steps. I know whom to go to. I know that, if anything happens, I can always first get in touch with my senior level manager, and of course later on to the the CEO of the organization. That power has been given to me by the organization, but every organization has that. So I think I would recommend that go and ask for the mechanisms which are in place. First of all, ask for that one email address that you can send to. That one email address will really change everything for you. Mr. Manjana, I had one question is, what happens to PoSH when there are less than 10 people involved in an organization?
Okay, so incidentally, there are a couple of, I should not say that the mistakes, but there are some challenges that did happen when the law has been made. So there is an obligation for every organization employing 10 or more people to constitute the internal committee. Now, we have came across many situations where a woman would not be there at all working if there is an organization which employs 15 or 20 people. And the reason I said the challenges because there is a mandate or there is an obligation that the presiding officer of the internal committee should be a woman. And the 50% participation of the women is there with at least 4 members of the committee, which are the minimum members. Now, wherever organization does not have 10 people and there is no constitution of the internal committee, you can still raise the complaints to the local complaints committee, or as I told you, there are forums available. You can directly approach to the police station and file your complaint, or you can even take the matter to the Ministry of Women and Child Development. Now, as organization would not have a committee, they would direct the matter for the investigations to the police department. I hope I've answered your query.
Yeah, I know nobody wants to really go that far, but sadly we have to.
Yes, just adding, even local complaints committee can take it. You can suggest them to go to district office. I know people don't. And I must share with you that you are also an employer. So maids or house helps who are women can also complain. The sabji vendor, even they can complain. So any working woman as per this law. In fact, I must tell you that I got an opportunity to research other countries' prevention of sexual harassment law. Ours is a very progressive law, other than the gender aspect. The whole mechanism is very progressive, right? So while we can say that it is not covering, or they have left major part of people out of it, but the process is very nicely tied. So this is something that we should be appreciative about it. I think Nishtha has.
Thank you. So while we have spoken about the local complaints committee, the ICC at Humsafar Trust, I would want to take this opportunity to share with my queer community members that as I was not aware about the existence of PoSH at so many workplaces that I have worked with, the current one that I'm working with has got me as one of the members of the Internal Complaints Committee. And while Mr. Machindra did mention that the requirement is of having a constitution of 50% men and 50% women, queer folks also equally participate and can contribute. It is just that we have to ask. Now that we are having this conversation, I'm sure a lot of people may be curious to know what is it in play at their workplaces. It's good to ask and see how you can contribute. And while this has been a journey for me as well, and I have also been taking training sessions during induction for our new joinees or employees, I have learned quite a lot of things. But there's one particular thing that we learned from KelpHR while we were having our conversations was about curiosity harassment. While there are different types of harassments that are known to us, which may come under sexual harassment, curiosity harassment is something that has been not noticed or not spoken about. I tried to read on the internet, however, I could not find anything about this particular aspect, which in practical, I personally have faced. There have been questions, I'm sorry, trigger warning, but being a queer person, I have experienced people coming and asking, so have you gone through your surgery? When are you planning to go for your surgery? I mean, this coming from the HR manager in the beginning of even joining the organization is something that triggers, is something that affects me, and is something that makes me feel uncomfortable while I'm working at the workplace. There have been comments where people have literally said, oh, आज pants और shirt पहना है तो आज लड़का बन के आया है, or oh, today she is draping a sari. I could hear all this and it was all affecting my performance at work. However, I was not aware where do I reach out. So these are certain curiosity points which were, very much hurtful. Not just that, but malicious curiosity was one another term that I learned from KelpHR, and of course it does exist. People intentionally come and try to ask, "Idhar muh pe se mooch kyun aati hai? You're not taking hormones." That's none of anybody's concern. You are curious, I understand, but keep your curiosity to yourself, or rather go and read it on the internet. But do not ask a queer person such delicate questions which really affect us or which really force us to take, actions which we are ideally not supposed to. So there are many more things which I'm sure with KelpHR coming in, we would be able to learn. But I would want to stress on this fact very, very importantly that don't assume, don't be afraid. Just go and ask for your rights. And that's how organizations will work towards creating gender-neutral policies or inclusion of queer people in the PoSH policy if we ask for our rights. Thank you.
So beautifully said. It will really help us evolve. We are all learning. Thank you very much for raising your hand and telling us things. Thank you. So there are a lot of questions I think, and I know I've been getting texts that they have. So I open this to the questions on the class.
So just a few comments. When we are in workplaces, queer or not, whether we are Humsafar Trust or any other organization, safeguarding and protection of my teams is the responsibility of the organization. So we need to bear that, Nishtha, that's where we need to begin, that Nishtha is my team. When I begin with Nishtha, I need to have provisions that if Nishtha is being dead named, Archana started, what is the mechanism available to Nishtha that the dead naming can be addressed? Because we should understand when you're talking about sexual harassment, in any space, it's not very easy for the person. How are you going to protect the interest of the complainant? How are you going to protect the interest of the more vulnerable? How are you going to ensure that once that complaint is made, the complainant is not harassed further? So earlier we had an HR policy that had provisions for sexual harassment, but now we have a separate policy. We are effective from 1st April 2022, but the easiest, simplest, and the best thing to do is put it on your website, disseminate it widely, because people outside of this room, people in the outside world, anybody who Googles that is there a gender-neutral policy, you would find one policy out there, and probably that one policy would multiply into 50 policies.
Smita, I just wanted to add to what Sir has said. Sir, after the judgment of 2018, the government of India was compelled, I'm using the word very carefully, the government of India compelled to come out with a new legislation called as the Transgender Persons Protections of Rights Act in 2019. 2014 Nalsa judgment happened. Thereafter 2018.
TG bill was 2019.
𝙐𝙤𝙙𝙙𝙬 judgment happened in the month of September 2018.
That I know.
Yes.
I was part
and
of.
after that, sir, after that, the 2019 Act came into existence.
Yeah,
It is actually
19.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it is the outcome of these judgments wherein the government has also recognized. Now, as per the Transgender Persons Protections of Rights Act, there is an obligation which has been casted on the organization that to ensure that all these people would not be discriminated because of their recognition of one particular gender. Organizations are required to have policies in place, and they should also have a liaison officer wherein he would address any such complaint or concern which is coming. There is a protection also of having an employment opportunities for them as per the new law now. I just wanted to add to what you said, and absolutely correct.
Yeah,
sir.
thank you, Machindra. Thank you, Vivek. Actually, a little deeper issue. While we have laws in place, what is an issue is the biasness, the micro inequities people go through. While they know it on the front that there's something which is illegal, but somewhere deep down, how we are brought up to say that this is something which is maybe not right. We cannot have a woman working next to us. The woman should be in 𝙐𝙤𝙙𝙬𝙧, but why is she working next to us? Why are we sharing our work relationship with somebody who is maybe a trans person? So we've been brought up with so much of toxicity. It is not easy to give up. You know, a law cannot change it. It needs a deeper mindset change. I think that is what we are working on, you know, having law as a background. I think we have few more questions.
My name is Amit, and thank you for this discussion. So forgive my ignorance, but I just wanted to find out that what are the audit or the regulatory mechanisms for this PoSH, because I think it's good to kind of say that organizations should have these mechanisms in place, but I was just wondering what are the regulations, like who checks and how does it get checked about whether these things are being implemented? And secondly, my second question was that are there any statistics available about how many grievances have been successfully redressed through this act, or how many grievances have not been redressed and thereby being taken forward to a tribunal or employment tribunal and so on? So these were my two questions. Thank you.
Thanks. I will address the query. Recently, in the Parliament House, the Women and Child Development Minister also shared the number of cases they had received on the she-mail box of the ministry. There are two obligations which are casted as per the provisions of the sexual harassment law. And I will not share the section, but yes, I mean, it is section 21 and 22. Under section 21, the internal committees of every organization are required to share an annual report to the deputy collector of the region with details of the cases that are handled, details of the actions which are taken, and the cases which are pending. Now, this is one obligation. Another very, very serious obligation which has been casted on the board members of every organization is under section 22 of the PoSH Act, wherein the board members are required to give the report to the Ministry of Corporate Affairs in the annual report of the company, once again giving the complete details of the cases that were registered, the cases which were resolved, and the cases which are pending, and even information that how many cases are pending beyond 90 days. So these are two very important obligations which are casted, and there is a penalty. If these are not taken care by the organization, there is a penalty of 50,000 rupees in the first conviction, and if it is continued, then either the double of the penalty or cancellation of the business license. Very, very serious obligations. Having said that, there is a definitely a mechanism, and government is definitely tracking the overall how the act is appropriately implemented. I would still say that there is still a room available, because at the moment there is no authority which has been declared, notified by the government, who would actually enter into the premises of the companies and would check that how the law has been positively implemented or not. It is still to be done by the government. Hopefully, maybe in the near future, government will take the cognizance of the same and will act accordingly. I would add only final point is that since last 8 years of the inception of this act, there has been a very positive development, a progressive development. Many organizations have not only complied to this law in the later, but in the spirited conduct, and probably Smita would have much better understanding of that, how, because she is supporting 700 organizations, her company is supporting 700 organizations. So they have really implemented in a very, very positive spirit. Still, there is a need, as I said, authority, once it is nominated, a proper check and balance may see that how many organizations are implementing in its later spirit, actually. Thanks.
Just adding while I won't have a full-on whole India view right now, and Machindra mentioned that Minister has shared it. And so one thing that I would want to add on to is during lockdown, what we thought was that the number of sexual harassment cases will go down because people are in virtual world. But trust me, it was the same. What it was in 2019, it remained in 2020, 2021, and it has started increasing. So sexual harassment perpetrators do not go away. What I'm very happy about is, earlier, the minor instances wouldn't get reported. You know, people will say it's minor, it's way of life. But now, folks have started reporting minor incidents. So it is a big thing because we are trying to nip it at the bud. Let's not wait for government to make a change and put the policies in place and check who's following. I think each one of us have responsibilities. How many of y'all have gone to your organization and asked, where is the policy? Why is the poster not up here? Can I know where I can report? Please be an active ally to this, right? Ask those questions so people will start making those changes. And to the extent, I was sharing with the panel earlier that yesterday's case, after that case, I realized that this organization is not up to the mark. I have taken a personal decision of resigning from that organization as an external member. So are we taking those strong stance? Are we standing up for our own rights? This is something that I would want each one of us to reflect. While government will do their jobs, what are we doing to ensure that we are working towards it is something that I would want to add here.
So I'm very proud, someone from the community, I'm speaking from back here. So someone from the community very proudly, in fact, stood and asked a senior manager, because they work night shifts, how do I know if I'm safe working here night shifts? And of course, he quoted the policies and saying, but all these policies are vanilla policies. So what should a manager, how can they prove at interviewing level that someone so boldly asked? I was very proud of someone who asked that. So what was our need to tell people that they can feel safe working 24/7 shifts? So could you help me on that one? Thank you.
So thank you for asking this question, and it is very important to ensure that there is some protection provided to a queer person while they're working in a 24/7 work time or shifts. I did so, and that was one of my major concerns, especially during my transitioning days, where people used to follow me and I was very much unsafe. The manager could have done is provided them some support. If they were not aware of what is it that they could offer, they could have asked the person, in what way do you need support? How can we support? However, there are options, one of which that I was very blessed and fortunate to get was transport facility with an escort. So whenever my shift would get over, I would get a drop facility and there would be an escort in the cab. There would be a display of the ICC committees, name of the members, their contact details, even the email IDs for that matter, to whom we could reach out and report in case if there was any situation which could lead to sexual harassment at workplace. So these are the little things, which as a manager, he could or she could have informed to the person who is coming from the queer community and asking for protection during these hours. Also, ensuring them that they are secure while there are security personnel around. And when I say that, it is also important to have equal representations as much as men and women security personnel at workplace too. Because what challenges a queer person will go through, a queer person would be better at knowing them and helping them in such a situation. So there's something called as employee resource groups, which a lot of organizations do have in. We can have representatives be working within the teams who can be available during the shift hours, to whom a queer person can reach out, let them know their concerns, discuss with them, to whatever issues they have, and see how they can be helped, while they are in the workspace at their desk while working.
ERG group is very effective. So I think you all should, within the organization, start creating those ERG groups and empower these groups to be able to make the people from the community feel safe. So there'll be a lot of training, lot of brainstorming going on that what these ERG groups will do. So it's your question will be straight away answered. So you have to just simply attach that person to the ERG group and they're taken care of.
My name is Archana Shetty. That question which was asked, I wanted to say that Abhishek always did, like wherever he went, during the first interview only he checked. When everything was done, he checked that, I am queer, I am gay. So I want to know that first, whether I will be accepted here or not, and accepted by all. And when it happens, when you do it with either CEO or director only, it works, And then, from there only that announcement was made that such and such person is there, and everyone should respect that person, So that is one way of, doing. And then, like, it will be like sometimes, person is already working there, and then, during the course of later on if the person comes out, it is, I feel that HR is the person who can take care of this, person can reach out to HR that, I'm coming out as this, and HR can take care of it, because I'm saying my personal experience, the way I'm doing it.
We need HR people like you, Arunaji.
Yeah. And also that dead naming, I wanted to say that there was some years back, all the resumes come to me, I only shortlist and I only take interviews. So one thing that good in our organization is that person was trans man, but the old documents with the old names, and I was happy. I was happy to receive that, and I had shortlisted that. So I feel that, and that trans man was selected, of course. But I feel that, it was between him and me. It was, but all the documents were with the old name, female name. So and we have, like in our organization, we have all those statutory PF, ESIC, and that those things, you have to have those, that has to match with your school, college, those names, with the birth certificate and all. So, that person was hired, and after that, I personally took care of changing the name everywhere, helping trans men to change the name, and then changing all the places, And that was kept secret between two of us. So it is again like HR can take care of all those things also, I feel.
So Arunaji, definitely you have to conduct a session for HR folks, how to take care of such situations.
Yeah, there are so many small things you need to do. Yeah, we can do that.
Smita, if I can add one line here. My request also that many organizations are very progressive organizations and they are showing huge acceptance. Now, only challenge or only request or appeal here is that in case if we are transitioning, from the biological gender, it is imperative for us to let organization know so that the surprises would not be there. And they can take the corrective steps to implement certain policies which will protect the interest of everyone actually. So that is the only request from my side.
Yeah. So one question was asked when PoSH was introduced. So somebody asked, Madam, this is also there were, that time there were 8 or 9 like and we asked, अगर उन्होंने हमको मैनेज किया तो क्या? So that's it, So again, there also I'm saying that all HR only can take care of all these things. So we have, for every small complaint, we have some committee. And we have, and we call it as, as also safety team. And they, every small complaint, they can complain over there, and then we make sure that the care is
stick. As per Industrial Dispute Act also, you should have a grievance redressal committee in all organizations. Unfortunately, many organizations do not know about it. They think it is industries, only industries should have. It should be all corporates, but there is some about that. I think there were more questions or? Okay, he's giving me a big no. So thank you very much. I think one last statement from each one of us and we'll close this. Okay, any closing statement from each one of you?
I think I'd like to say this, that, queer people are everywhere. You don't have to go and find them, just put your policies in place.
So while all organizations are trying to be inclusive and they're running this DE and I, expertise, or they're waving the rainbow flags outside the organizations, let us go and ask, what is it for us to protect us at our workplace? Let us ask about trans policies. Let us ask about queer policies at workplace. Let us ask about PoSH at workplace, which needs to be inclusive too. Thank you.
The most important and the wonderful thing on this earth is first is life, and there after that it is the love across the boundaries of the nations. It doesn't really look into the gender. The many countries have recognized the equal rights of all the people on this earth. Let us see that in the coming future, you would live absolutely wonderful life with the equal protection of rights across the boundaries of nation. Wishing you every wonderful life and a blessed life going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, and I just wanted to thank each one of you. I think we had amazing learning today. I mean, we're going to treasure all this forever and ever. Thank you very much.
A big round of applause. On behalf of Kashish, I would like to thank Nishtha, Archana, Machindra for being such lovely panelists. A big round of applause to them. And also Smita for being such a wonderful moderator. And all those lovely questions. Unfortunately, we couldn't have more, but they will be there. So you can connect with them and you can talk to them, and it'll be great, I'm sure. So on behalf of Kashish, we'd like to present a token of gratitude. May I have my team? Come on, they deserve a round of applause, guys. Thank you.